Good evening, and please let us welcome. Good evening, family members, Jana family. So it's my privilege to welcome Sajal Lahiri, Dr. Sajal Lahiri, professor from the State University of Southern Illinois. He is from the place where I grew up, that is Kolkata, the institutes. So please welcome Sajal Lahiri. He is going to share his journey, his experiences, varied as they are, from Kolkata through Essex, through Warwick, Essex, England, and then on to Chicago and Illinois, where he is presently based. It's been a long journey, and so we are going to have him and share his anecdotes, his stories, his varied experiences, and something to treasure, something to make us wise on as life goes on. So here, sir, I hand you over to all the members. Please come in and enlighten us, and please make this conversation, as we are about to have, interesting as would certainly be.
Oh, thank you very much, Kaustabh. Very generous welcome. I'm an economist. Economics and my background is in statistics, so I work with a lot of data. But economics is about the country and everything, the society. So I'm also kind of interested in politics. Without politics, you cannot have economic policies because that's why the policies are made. So one has to be aware of the policies and the society, of course, that we grew up. And if I start with Kulti, this is a town about 200 kilometers from Kolkata. I was brought up there. I was born there and I grew up there. Went to a local school. But the nice thing about Kulti was that in my own, what we call in Bengali, Para, the locality, we had Muslim friends, we had Christian friends. So I grew up with them, with multi-religious friendship group. Yes. So I know about these religions. We used to celebrate each other's festivals right from the beginning. So right from my life, day one of my life, I had a very secular upbringing. And that's how I am today, even today. And then after about 16 years of my life, I went to Indian Statistical Institute in Kolkata to study BStat. Then I did MStat and PhD there. I spent 9 years. And there I found students from all over India.
Right.
So that's another exposure to the wider India. So all my friends were from South India, Delhi, Bombay, and all over India. So these two together as a development, very early development, to having friends like different religions, different states, different languages. What it did to me is made me kind of although I love my language, Bengali, I can read, write, and speak very fluently Bengali, but I don't have any kind of nationalism in me. So no kind of nationalism, not a drop-off in my blood. And like Tagore's tradition, also an internationalist. Then I go abroad, and then I meet students from all over the world. And that kind of, again, you learn about Pakistani friends, Bangladeshi friends, Arab friends, Colombian friends, all sorts of things. So when you know those people, then you know they're not nasty people. No. Often our kind of nationalism comes from our ignorance. And I was very, very fortunate to grow up like that. And so that's my kind of social development of me. And I remain like that even today. Very kind of an internationalist, you can call me.
I couldn't agree more with you on this. I went through the same kind of atmosphere, grew up with all sorts of people, color, creed, caste,
Yeah,
religion. It never
yeah,
affected me.
yeah,
I feel blessed that that is something that has made me what I am today. I don't have any bias or prejudice
yeah.
towards any human
That's
being.
that's that's the ideal kind of the ideal thing. And that doesn't mean that, internationalism, people often confuse nationalism with patriotism.
Yes,
Tagore was a patriot, uh,
yes,
and he was an internationalist. He loved
yes,
Bengali, he loved Bengal, he loved India, but he has never said in his life that Bengali is the best language in the world or
yes,
Bengal is the best place in the world. He says, I love it. It's my state, my language. I love
yes,
it. That does not mean I have to dislike somebody else. In economics, we call a public good that that I loving somebody doesn't mean that love is a public good. If you love somebody, you don't have to hate somebody else.
right.
And that's the kind of philosophy that I have in my life.
Wonderful. I mean,
And then, yeah.
please
And
carry on.
then professionally, as I said, I was a statistics student. But for my PhD, I had a very wonderful advisor. I was talking before to you about him, Professor Sanjit Bose.
Yes.
He was, when I started my PhD, I was 21 and he was 31. He just come back from USA
Ah.
after doing his PhD. And this is something doesn't happen in India. We both used to smoke a brand called Charminar, a cigarette,
Oh, yes.
in those days. And
So,
as I would go to his room to talk, he would offer me a Charminar, and I would smoke that with so much pleasure. Smoking with your professor. Okay, so he was a very
that,
liberal man, but he was absolutely wonderful as an advisor. You would not get such an advisor anywhere in the world. Uh, so I was very, very fortunate. So I was able to finish my PhD in 4 years. And presumably I did very good work because those papers got published in very good journals
yeah.
and which landed me with a job in England.
Okay.
Uh, although he himself did his PhD in USA, he kind of discouraged me to go to USA. He said, go to Europe, go to Europe. He always used to advise me to go to Europe. They have some history, he used to say.
True.
Good or bad, good or bad.
True.
Some long history. So I ended up in England, but then I ended up in USA as well. Uh,
Right. England was in today's, if you look at in today's context or subject of economics, England in a way was the birthplace. It was Keynes who actually shaped, gave it a new look, and who shaped up what economics is all about, the
sure.
macro.
Yeah.
So England, in a way, it is the birthplace. Probably, if I were to presume, probably he had taken everything as part of history for you to go to the place where it has a lot of history vis-a-vis your
Yeah.
subject.
Yeah. So he was, yeah, that's the reason I think, and also uh, kind of whether history you like or you're not doesn't mean that you have to like their colonial
Right.
ventures and things like that. But there are certain about literature, English literature, and economics and sports as well. Football, cricket, and all these things kind of started there.
Yeah.
But I had some very good English friends who are my age, and I still very friendly with them. And they're
Okay.
like exactly like me, internationalist. Uh, there is not much. That's one thing different from USA and England.
Mhm.
Although officially USA is a secular country,
Right.
and UK, it's Christianity is the official language. The
Right.
king has to be a Christian and things like that.
Uh,
But de facto, there's no religion in the state. It's people don't go to very few people go to churches on Sundays like they do in USA. So it's a very secular country in many ways, although officially not.
Yes, yes, but this is something that surprised me as well, because during one of my visits to US, I was quite surprised being apparently such a liberal place where you have all kinds of people of different races from across the world. But an American is very, very religious minded in the sense that he will never miss out on his prayers and church.
Yeah. And the Sunday, our little town here is full of
Right.
churches. Every street corner has a church, and on Sunday they're all full. Sunday
Yes,
morning, they're all
I've
full.
seen. So this is something I found it quite strange. Whereas the same doesn't happen in UK. It's
Yeah.
it's it's quite liberal. I mean, though officially they have a state religion, but otherwise they are quite liberal on that front. So would you share some of your moments then in E6 and later on as you carried on with your work? I think one related to this retail marketing
Yeah.
policy of that sort, which is very interesting
Yeah.
because
So,
retail
yeah,
marketing directly affects the consumer. And
consumer, yeah. Now, this is something I'm very not just proud of, but I enjoyed. It kind of opened me up.
uh,
Out of the blue, I had a phone call from the Lord Chancellor's office one day. Lord
okay,
Chancellor, there is the person who is in charge of what do you call the lawmaker in
right,
uh, in
okay,
Indian context. His office. Somebody said that there is this time it's a phone call. Okay,
hmm,
that there is a case coming up in the Royal Court of Justice. It's a case between the government and the pharmaceutical companies and the pharmacies. It's
okay,
about something called retail price maintenance, which
okay,
meant that for certain goods, the
right,
manufacturer can set the price.
okay,
So that £10 a bottle of vitamins,
hmm,
okay? And a seller cannot sell it at a lower price,
okay,
okay? So and if they did, then that's illegal and they can be sued and they can be, okay? So, sometimes if they're selling at $10, they're possibly $3 is their profit. So they can sell it for $8 and still make a profit. And the consumers get $2 less to pay.
yes,
But the
okay,
producers can fix the price.
okay,
And that can be very high. That can be very high. So, and this was this is called RPM or retail price maintenance.
hmm,
And this was allowed for two goods. One is books.
okay,
There's the MRP, there's right. You possibly have seen MRP such and such on books. And the other was medicine. And the reason was books are needed to educate people. And so we need to produce lots of books. And if the producers don't get the right price, they will not produce them. That's the kind of idea.
okay,
And similarly, medicine, there are public health issues and all those things.
hmm,
If they cannot maintain, all these little pharmacies will go out of business, and the big supermarkets which will sell medicine. So these old ladies and the old men cannot have access to those medicines. So that's a public health issues.
okay, okay,
So that's the two reasons why they were given exceptions.
okay.
And
But
so
if you,
there was this, yeah.
I'm sorry, please,
Yeah.
please,
So there was a court set up. There's a law of in the parliament. It's called Retail Price Maintenance. No, Restrictive Practices Court.
okay,
Restrictive Practices Court. And
mhm,
that used to look at special cases. If there is any it's like a monopolies commission.
okay,
Okay. So by law, that court has to have 3 judges.
Okay.
one High Court judge,
Mm-hmm.
one professional economist,
Okay.
and somebody else, accountant or somebody,
Okay.
depending on the case.
Okay.
Okay, so that's by law. So they had to have an economist. And since this is a case between government and private citizens,
Mm-hmm.
the government cannot deal with it. So it's the Queen who was the
Okay.
head of this Royal Court of Justice. So my appointment then the law, and I was of course very happy to be able to help as one of the three judges. So I had to. So I have a letter from the Queen appointing me, which is on display in my office. Her hand signed. It's called actually officially it's called a warrant. It's
Okay.
not a request, it's a warrant. You shall do this. So anyway, so then the court case was fascinating. We had about 6 weeks reading weeks where you read all the written submissions from both sides. Then the actual hearing with the top barristers arguing for the two sides. And we were told that whatever my view is on this issue, my personal view, whether RPM is good or bad, that's of no concern. So what we should be judging based on evidence, what the both sides will be presenting. Okay, that's all. I cannot be prejudiced one way or another. So we listened to both sides for about 3-4 months, 4 days a week. And what it did to me is my respect for the law profession went up. I didn't used to think that I know, like many people make jokes about the lawyers and things like that. But I was so amazed that the degree of the attention they pay to little details when the barristers are presenting the case. The attention to details was amazing and the logical. And when they're talking, they put an emphasis on a particular word. And my colleague, the High Court judge, who was with me, he knew all those things. And during the lunchtime, he would tell us, this guy, what he was trying to take us to, he's going to come up with this and that. So he was a seasoned judge, so he knew how the lawyers work. They used to call me the professor, the nutty professor, whatever it is, the barristers. And I used to ask them difficult questions and all these things. It went on and on. Then ultimately, we decided that the RPM should go.
Okay.
There should not be any restrictions. And this was in 2001, I think, or 2000. So it became illegal, RPM. The producers could not set the price. And people started giving huge discounts on the RPMs. So for example, a bottle of multivitamins, which was 10 pounds a bottle of 50, that came down to 5 pounds.
Okay.
50% reduction. And that was widespread reduction in price. And an economist, to see that your work has led to a fall in prices and therefore benefit to consumers, that's a huge satisfaction. Huge satisfaction.
No wonder. So you
And
were
so that, I think, my best work
no one.
in my life, and I'm very, very proud of it and very happy about it as well, that I did something useful to the
You
society.
made a major contribution.
Yeah, made a contribution. That's the key thing. They didn't pay me much. They used to pay my cost of traveling and things like that. But my university allowed me to go there. They didn't give any trouble. I didn't make any money. But the other satisfaction was, those barristers, they call them QCs, Queen's Counsels. Now they'll be called KCs, King's Counsels. They used to possibly earn about 15, 20 times more than me.
Okay.
But when we entered the court, they all had to stand up. That was very satisfying. The court rise, and we entered the three of us entered the court. That was a kind of a, and for an economist to do legal work, that's kind of, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my colleagues, particularly the High Court judge.
Okay.
He used to tell us all these little details, lunchtime meetings in between, the sessions. We used to have the lunchtime meetings. And so we had lots and lots of meeting among ourselves, the three of us. But I haven't seen any pharmacies going out of business because of that, which was the main reason why it had. None of them went out of business. So it was
In a
all,
way, if you look at it, this was in a way a welfare measure.
yeah.
If you were to look at it, it was a welfare measure, and you were largely instrumental. If I were to use the word,
And not just me, but the lot of the work was done by the what they were. That was not the Monopolies Commission. There was a government department which was making a case for getting rid of it, but they could not themselves do by legislation. It had to be done through the court.
okay,
So yeah, I had some contribution. I would not say that I was the only one who did that. Both sides presented their case.
yes,
So it's the government sides who presented the case,
right,
and they did most of the work. Kind of convinced us that they were right. So that's the key here.
okay,
But I was part of it. I was a part of it, definitely. So
wonderful.
that's my kind of big contribution. The other contribution is supervision. What I did for my PhD, the topic was unimportant. I did on planning and things like that, input-output models. But I learned from my advisor, Sanjit Bose, how to supervise students, not just for me learning, but his style of supervision. And I learned from a lot of other people like Ashok Mitra, Dr. Ashok Mitra, who was a minister in West Bengal. He taught us how to love your students. Kind of he used to take us. When he was a minister, I was that time past my PhD, and I met him. He saw me in the street, in a big crowd, and he identified, and he came up to me. What are you doing now? What are you doing now? And he was a minister. All the policemen surrounding him was getting nervous. What is he doing? But he was that type of a person. He never forgot his students. So I learned those things from my teachers. And then there are individual professors at ISI, the style of teaching, the way there are always some teachers who are so kind of inspire you. And you learn from how to teach, not just the topic of what you are learning, but actually how they present. So all these things, I have UK and USA are both international universities, the ones I taught. So we had students from all over the world. So you teach them. And the other main contribution would be supervising PhD students.
Wow.
So I'll possibly stop there, and you can lead
No,
me to some other topics.
it's then after that, the change, you moved across the Atlantic
Yeah.
into America.
Yeah.
So what, if I were to use a word, what prompted you, or what actually made you take this move and cross over?
Yeah, it was a big decision for us because all our three children were brought up in England, and I kind of learned my economics there at the university from my colleagues and from my students. But then I worked there for 25 years, and then my present employer, there was an endowed chair, and there was a Japanese professor who was holding that chair, and he passed away, and then they were looking for somebody to replace him. So they contacted me. I didn't even reply to their email. Then I was so happy with at Essex, University of Essex, and in England. Then they called me and then said, look, this job means this is endowed position. Endowed position meaning although it's a state university, my salary doesn't come out of taxpayers' money. It comes out of an endowment.
Endowment.
So it means I had less teaching. I would have less teaching than I was doing it at Essex. And I will have more time for my own research. And there'll be more income also, more money. I shouldn't say that's not important. The income would be higher than an average professor in my university because it's coming from a different fund. So all these three factors, I persuaded my wife to come. Our children, kind of the older two were already university students. They stayed back in England. Our younger daughter, who was 13 then, she came with us and she went to a local high school.
Okay.
And she went to college and things like that. So that was kind of the three reasons: less teaching, more research, more money.
So you got involved into more into research and guiding your students. As I can see that you had almost about close to 60 or 64 that you have
Supervised.
been.
Yeah. And
So
they're from 30 different countries. That's also very important. So in the World Cup, when we have World Cup football, I see how many of my countries are represented there.
Okay.
So I consider them to be, those 30 countries to be my country as well.
Okay. How wonderful. So could you share some of those experience from students from different places that you had guided them, and you did that bit of hand holding and
Yeah, there's a kind of three components. One is the hand holding, and you have to be tough with them if you think that they're not doing their work. And of course, then come up with discussions and ideas. And hand-holding is when they're down. In research, sometimes you don't just keep working and don't get any results for months and months. Then they need to be, you have to hold their hand, say, come on, hold on. I've been through those things myself in my life. So these three elements, but helping is very important. You have to help them. Often I have seen in all countries, in India, in UK, and in USA, the supervisors don't see their students. Rarely they see their students. And the students are struggling for 7, 8, 10 years to do their PhD. Often they will say that the student is lazy, but often you see that they're not getting the necessary help from the advisor. That's my view. So here in the USA, after coming, I've set a kind of a standard that meeting students regularly. And I'm very punctual. And if I say that I'll see you at 10 a.m., I expect them to be there at 10 a.m., not 10 minutes later and things like that. So they all know that. So they're waiting 5 minutes before outside my office. So I've kind of set up a system here where now everybody follows that system. And we have a very efficient PhD program. We have kind of very quick turnover of students. So here in SIU, I have supervised about 47 students in my 22 years here. So about more than 2 students per, because they're also different vintage. So at any point in time, you possibly have 6 students working with you in 6 different problems. Unlike science subjects, where all students work in the area where the professor is working.
Right.
But in social science, that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
So the students kind of choose their own problems, and you
Right.
have to kind of learn those things and then help them. So it's not, they're working not in my kind of specialist area often.
Right. It's
So that's
actually
the
not
other thing. Yeah. So I've
actually not
supervised
or
topics.
defined as in
Yeah.
as sciences. Science, well, it has a definition, but here it is much more wider in the sense, as you mentioned, that social sciences, it has different issues, and so you have to take in varied subjects, varied issues, varied subjects, problems arising out of that, and so it's quite challenging, I
Yeah.
would
And
say.
the other thing is, what I tell my students, that I would not give them a problem to work on. I
Ah,
said, you find your own problem. I will help you to formalize it.
hmm,
Okay. So you go out and sit in one corner, don't need to read books, just sit on your chair and think about what you think is important and that you should be working on. What interests you, what is your passion? You think that I passionately feel about that, not because there's more money in that, if I work in finance, I can
hmm,
earn more money. Not that kind of thing, but you have to be passionate about the topic that you are working on. So first 2-3 months goes like them kind of thinking, and I'm helping them in their thinking, but they have to come up with their own problems. No, I don't dish out, you work on this problem.
right,
And once they choose their own problem, then they're into it. You see, then it helps them to, uh, otherwise they're working on somebody else's problem.
right,
Uh, so that helps, I think, that helps them to get into the research topic very, very quickly, deep into it. Then I'll
right,
be helping them to, if they're kind of straddling some, often you think of one problem and then suddenly you think tangentially in other directions. So my job is to keep them on a straight line. Okay, think about it later on. Right now we finish this problem. Okay, go on a straight line and finish it, not sort of straddle around.
hmm,
So these are the kind of techniques I learned from my own advisor. And he used to be very, he was very angry with me because I criticized somebody's work. And he said, do you have an alternative? I said, no. Then you have no right to criticize. He
okay,
told me. Okay. So uh, that's the kind of philosophy of research. Not try to find faults in other people's work. Uh, you can, of course, learn from other people's work, but there are some paper they may have for problems, but then you solve it. But you cannot say that that's a bad paper without justification. So
right,
that's a kind of a. So I've never written a paper. I've written possibly over, I don't know how many, maybe nearly about 200 kind of research papers. Not a single one of them is a critique of somebody else's paper. I'm not saying that's the best way or that's the only way, but that's my upbringing and that's how I did. But no, some of the, I have read some critiques which are wonderful critiques, but they are very constructive. They'll criticize somebody and then go deep into it. But I haven't done that. Other people have done it, but I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, but just my one telling off from my advisor had kind of uh, stopped me from working that way direction.
I understand. So, coming to your university where you are now and you are based at, would you tell us about the environment, the composition, as in the people, the professors, the environment, the physical environment, the cultural environment? If you could enlighten us on that.
Yeah, culturally, Essex and this place is very different. They're very diverse places. In the faculty, there are lots of foreigners,
Okay.
foreign-born faculty, foreign-born students. In our SIU, you find lots of African-American students.
Okay.
They're first-generation students. And it is really pleasure. I find it somebody, these people are not very well prepared in their life. They have possibly went to a bad school, but they are clever people, but did not have the exposure, the opportunities. And this is the type of people you find everywhere. And if you make one of them successful, that's so much satisfaction
Yes.
you don't get from. I had a student at Essex, a Nigerian student. He did
Okay.
his PhD, and his external examiner, you would possibly know, Professor Meghnad Desai, Lord Desai. He is at
Lot.
LSE.
Mm-hmm.
And he examined his PhD and he passed his PhD. And then he comes to my office very exhausted because Meghnad gave him hard time, 3 hours grilling about his dissertation. So I had some Coke in my office. I said, come on, drink some Coke. And then I said, how are you going to tell your parents? Those days, there was no internet. There was no, phones didn't work very well. I'm talking about, this was possibly 1984.
Okay.
So how are you going to tell your parents? The only thing he could do is to write letters. And he said, I almost cried when I heard that. He said, my parents are illiterate. They cannot read. So
Lord
he will,
Desai's parents are illiterate. I mean, this
yeah.
is a revelation. I mean,
And he would write to the kind of the what they call the village, what did they call in Africa? The so
in
this
Africa.
makes my eyes still moist when I talk about this case.
Ah,
What are they called? The chief.
chief. Okay.
He will write to the chief, and the chief will read that letter to his parents.
My
Okay.
God.
Now, and this person does his PhD from a British university.
Right.
And then he became a very top official in the Central Bank of Nigeria. He's now
Right.
possibly retired by now. Nglama, one Mr. Nglama.
Okay.
These are the kind of students, and I'm saying not just one examples. In USA also, you will see lots of African-American students. They're first-generation students.
Okay.
And then do well. Okay. Then is the value, if you get the best student and make them do well, your value added is not that much. Okay. But if you get a student, bright student, but with a very poor background, poor not just in financial sense, but in terms of the schooling and the quality of schooling and all those things. And
Right.
if that student succeeds, then you as a teacher actually added value to that person. And these
Definitely.
are very, very satisfying. And that I have done both in England and in USA. So this is the common aspect of, it's not true possibly if you go to Harvard and MIT, that would not happen. If you go to Oxford and Cambridge, that will not happen. But I went to University of Essex and Southern Illinois University. This is where you get those type of students. Lots
But
of
come
those type of
you
students.
mentioned about Harvard and MIT and Oxford. So, according to you, what is the difference between all these campuses, as in Essex or Southern Illinois, vis-a-vis Harvard or
You
Oxford,
mean
as
comparing the two countries or comparing Essex with Oxford?
uh, Essex with Oxford?
Yeah,
If
yeah. One thing is that they get the top cream, the students. At
right,
Oxford, we don't get. Essex, we did not get them. But in terms of, they have more resources.
huh,
In terms of the faculty is able to go to conferences everywhere, the department will pay for it. And in Essex and all will be limitedly funded. But Typically in Essex, there'll be more diversity, both in terms of students and in terms of the faculty.
Uh-huh.
But in terms of research ranking, which UK had formal ranking of departments by the quality of research we do, Essex was actually above Cambridge and Oxford at some stage in terms of the quality of the research per head, not the volume. Those people will have many people.
Mhm.
But if you look at per capita sense, the quality of research output, we are no less than them. But our son went to Oxford to study physics,
Okay.
and their graduation ceremony, I did not go. I was in Japan that time. My wife went. The whole
Okay.
ceremony was done in Latin.
Latin.
So my wife did not understand what was going on there. I don't know whether our son understood. But these are the kind of traditions they have. And Essex, we don't have those type of things. So we are kind of very
Okay.
working class, as they say in the UK. Speak English, and possibly with the local people talk with a bit of a Cockney accent as well
Okay.
in Essex.
Okay. Okay.
But if I want to compare Essex with UK with USA, I'm kind of glad that I grew up in England as a faculty, as a professor, because this is more wide. I had a more wider exposure. Here, people tend to be very specialized.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
If you are doing microeconomics, then they will call you, there's a field, microeconomics.
Right.
You are not allowed to teach courses in macroeconomics.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But Essex, if I want to learn international trade, which is my specialism now, I learned it because in 1982, I went to the department chair and told, can I teach a course on international trade? He said, of course you can. Of course you can. He gave me a course to teach international trade. I did not know anything about it, but he knew that I will work my, as the Americans say, butt off, preparing for that course. So I worked very, very hard. I read and read and read. And then I had to be honest with the students. And I said, I'm not an expert. I'm learning with you. We'll learn together. And I learned. And now I'm an expert on international trade because I was allowed to teach international trade in England. In USA, I would not have been allowed to. That's a big difference. That's a big difference.
Okay. So if I were to use this term that things are much more open in UK than as you get to see in
You don't get to be so specialized in UK. And there is a philosophy, I don't know whether it is still there. I give this in anecdotes. I give you, I was writing a book on international trade, and Cambridge University Press said they will publish it. So it was submitted, refereed, and then I had a letter from a lady from Sussex.
Okay.
She said, I have been asked to what they call copy editing? Yeah, copy editing is the technical, what is the term? The copy editor. Yeah, I'm the copy editor for this book. And he said, you have to be patient with me because I have a degree in, she's a kind of a lady in Sussex, not from Cambridge. I have a degree in art theory and history. Okay. But your book is in economics and lots of mathematics in it and numbers. And you have to be patient with me because I don't know those things.
Okay.
Okay. And then after 2 months, he sends me a list of corrections. Said, can you please look at that equation? There may be something wrong there. Can you look at that table? Maybe there's something wrong there. And you wouldn't believe she was right.
Oh.
There are some mistakes in those equations and those tables. And what she did, she must have been very, very clever. that she was looking at some sort of a pattern in those equations, symmetry, and she saw a break in that pattern. Similarly, in the numbers, some jump in the number. They're going down by certain, by 2, 3 like that. Then there's a big jump of 10. And she wanted me to check. And so my guess is that she was kind of looking at the pattern, although she did not know any mathematics or statistics. So the philosophy used to be the British philosophy that if you are clever, if you are really clever, what subject you did your degree is irrelevant. You can be an art historian and you can be the head of a R&D section of a ministry.
Okay.
You can lead the team because you are clever. Okay.
Okay.
That's the philosophy, very British philosophy. And I have proof of that because of this lady from Cambridge, the copy editor of my book. I was amazed by her, so impressed by her. And these are the kind of, this is possibly not true in USA. They will find somebody, an expert in that area to head. They'll not appoint a historian to head the treasury, for example.
Please carry on.
Yeah, so this is the kind of anecdotes. This story I tell a lot of people, and there's lots and lots of stories like that. Stories from my ISI days and stories from my Essex days and days here. The other experience I had here was the union. We are unionized, and I'm a member of the union, faculty union, but I'm not a kind of a office. I don't hold any office. I don't stand for president or secretary or things like that. Okay. But we have these negotiations with the university administration about a contract, collective bargaining contract. So they asked me to lead that union team for that collective bargaining. And that was fascinating as well. So you bargain over faculty's rights as opposed to the university's rights. Because if there is an agreement, then that becomes the university law. Everybody has to follow that bargaining. So working conditions and all sorts of things. So that was quite fascinating experience here in the USA. That happened about 3-4 years ago. So I don't know why the union asked me, but they thought I'm an old man, so university has to treat me with respect. They cannot shout at me, or I don't know what it is. Well, I was not on my own. There were 3 or 4 of us in our team.
How big is the Indian population there?
Sorry?
How big is people of India there in Illinois?
Indian origin.
Yes.
Yes, there is even in our small town. We are a very small town away from Chicago, in a town called Carbondale, with a total population of about 30,000. It's a university town, as they say.
Okay.
And we have about maybe 100 Indian families. I'm not saying Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi. There are lots of Pakistani, Bangladeshi, and Indian families here. A lot of Indians, more Indians, lot of doctors and professors, businessmen, hotel owners.
So how far off are you from Chicago?
Oh, quite a bit, about 300 miles, about 400 kilometers.
Oh, that's quite long.
So our daughter lives in Chicago, so we go there quite a lot. But the nearest big city is St. Louis, which is in a different state, in Missouri.
Missouri.
Yeah. But that's about 100 miles.
Okay.
Here, everything is in miles, not in kilometers. So.
Not in kilometers, right. So,
and there's a temple, Hindu temple in Carbondale. And I should put my things on the table here. I'm an atheist. So I'm not into temples and things like that. I go to temples to see the architecture. I saw some beautiful architecture in Hooghly last time I went there, in Purulia, in Bardhaman, Hindu temples. I was in Morocco last month, some beautiful mosques. The architecture is fabulous, you know. So I go to religious, I go to cathedrals to see them. So my relationship to religion is the architecture of those buildings, and I love going there, going to those places. For that reason only.
So much I agree with you, because temples, they are of historical significance, the architecture, the work that went on. But what is inside the temple is, well, it's mythology.
Sorry?
What is inside the temple, the story as in inside the temple.
There's some distortion in the sound system here.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Am I clear now?
Yes. Now it's clear.
So what I was saying that, as far as temples are concerned, it is the architecture and the history.
Yeah.
And the work that has gone in.
Yeah.
But what is inside, what lies inside the temple or a mosque or a church, that is entirely mythology, a belief that I may not agree.
Yeah, I may not agree. And I don't argue with people. It's a belief.
No, I don't either.
It's a belief. So let people have their beliefs. As long as I'm left alone with my belief, I'm happy with.
So it is about belief, personal belief. Yeah, so it is best left to them. But yes, much like you, I do visit temple for just that bit of artwork.
Yeah.
To acquaint myself with the history of it.
And sometimes the calmness and sometimes those places are so placid and peaceful from the outside. You can go and sit there and contemplate about anything.
Yes.
So you can just sit there and think about things. So I go to temples and mosques and cathedrals and there in Calcutta, there's some beautiful. What is the Jewish temple? What are they called? The
synagogues.
Synagogues. There's a beautiful one in Calcutta.
Yes.
With Italian Renaissance architecture.
Yes.
And so
it has been recently restored.
Is
the
that
one
so?
that you're talking about, it has been recently restored, and it's wonderful the way they have done it. Some good restoration work has taken place.
They do it.
So there are some nice places, beautiful places.
I went to Purulia, and we talk about Muslims destroying Hindu temples, and there you see Hindus destroying Hindu temples. You see a lot of examples of it. And they're restoring them, some of those temples, and they're doing a very good job. They're doing a very good job. Whatever the West Bengal Tourism Board doing it. And they have kind of built beautiful roads going through villages to those places. And I was very impressed by those developments, I have to say.
You must have been to Bishnupur.
Bishnupur, I haven't. That's my next kind of.
Okay.
Next time I go to India, I've been to Hooghly, I went to Purulia, I went to Bardhaman, but Bankura would be my next
Okay.
I went to Medinipur. So I'm sort of doing slowly the West Bengal and also to India, different parts of India. So we have,
Incidentally, you mentioned about Lord Desai. This was, I think, about 5 to 6 years back. Meghnad Desai and Joseph Stiglitz,
yeah.
both of them together, they came here to Northeast to Assam.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay.
And I had the honor of taking them around and doing food for them
Okay.
at a place away from Guwahati,
Okay.
at a secluded place at a resort where they were there. And of course, I couldn't take up on a conversation at length. I
But
was quite
Meghnad
lost
is
in between.
very fascinating to talk to. He
He
can
is.
talk about any subject
Yes,
anytime.
yes, he is. And he gets quite excited when he talks about things around
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
And
yeah. A very interesting person.
very much, very much. So I would say that please do come over to this part of the country. It would be my pleasure to take you around.
Is it not true that ISI have set up a campus somewhere in the Northeast in
Yes,
Assam?
yes, yes. ISI, there's a campus. There is this place, small little town called Tezpur,
Oh,
which is
Tejpur,
on the
that's right, Tejpur. Yes.
northern bank of the Brahmaputra. So in Tezpur, there's a university. Next to the university, there's a ISI
Okay.
campus. It is functioning. I think it came up after Delhi. After
Okay.
Kolkata, it was Delhi, where
Yeah,
ISI,
yeah. Then Madras, Bangalore, and
Madras,
places like
Bangalore,
that.
and this came up, I think, about 10 years from now. A little more than that. Little more than that.
Yeah, I know few people. I know somebody, those who were kind of in the beginning, they
Okay.
were running that place.
Okay. Okay.
But yes, Northeast, I would love to go. I've not been there at all.
Okay.
Been there at all.
Please do come. My invitation remains. Another
Sure.
thing, I get to see a poster of Nelson Mandela
Yes,
behind.
my hero in life.
I was about to ask you on that.
I have met him. I met him.
Oh,
He
how
came to
wonderful.
our Essex University.
Okay.
You know, every British university gave him honorary degree.
Right.
He didn't go to any of them.
Mhm.
So all the vice chancellors came to Buckingham Palace, and they stood in a line and gave him the honorary degree. And at Essex, we did the smartest thing. We gave his wife an honorary degree.
Okay.
And he came as an accompanying spouse.
Okay.
So he visited maybe the only campus in England he visited. And, you know, as a student in Calcutta, when he was jailed in 1967 or 8, I remember attending a protest march in Calcutta. Free, you know.
Okay.
And those days, the students used to be very international in Calcutta.
Yes,
They are
yes,
no
yes.
longer so.
No
Now
longer
it's on
so,
local
right.
issues.
Mhm.
Before it used to be a lot of international issues that he used to
Correct.
protest about.
Correct.
And then when you were at Essex, well, ANC was a terrorist organization that time, officially.
Right.
But we used to contribute funds to the ANC, to the London office.
Okay.
Collect money, and we used to boycott South African products. So I have a kind of a very soft spot for South Africa that way.
Okay.
Then when this man got released, the reconciliation, not bitterness about his jailers, he just amazed me. He just amazed me. And when I shook hands with him at Essex when he came, it kind of brought tears to my eyes. So my goodness. And he hasn't done anything that I kind of has lowered my respect. It has actually increased my respect for him. When he got divorced from his former wife, Winnie,
Right.
as a president, he went to the court himself to give evidence, and he went through the legal process and had a formal divorce from Winnie.
Right.
Okay. no hushing of anything. I think one of his children had AIDS. He publicly said that no, my son has AIDS and is dying. I say AIDS or whatever. I've forgotten and then he told everybody that to be careful about this type of infections, about have safe sex and all those things. Okay, so he was so open, and so he is my kind of hero in my life. I always admired him so much. So this is my study, and I have this big poster. And this poster I got from the ANC office in Johannesburg.
Okay.
This is the first election in South Africa. So
Okay.
it says,
may I interject? We have
sure.
passed the time frame,
Okay.
so can we just end?
Sure.
Fine. So it was wonderful, a privilege getting to know you and having you at our family and having you with us. It's been enlightening, your journey. And we have things besides, of course, we have certain things in common in the sense that we are from the same place. Though now I'm relocated, but we are from the same place. So it was a wonderful meeting, and we look forward to ahead on much more. Please carry on with all the good work that you are engaged in, involved in, your students, your university, the place you belong to. I would someday look forward to meeting you up and taking you around places off the beaten track. It's a privilege and wonderful listening to you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for Rajiva for organizing it. And I enjoyed talking to you. And it was
thanks
great
to him for getting this act together, if I may say so.
And I'll be just a quick finishing that I'll be retiring from 1st of September. So I'll have more time to spend in India, and I can go any time of the year. Now I was restricted. Only I could go during the holidays here. And so I'll see more of India in the coming months.
Look forward
the whole idea of retiring is, retirement here is voluntary, not mandatory.
Okay.
But I've decided to retire. I have been teaching for 47 years. So I had enough of it. And now I am to travel.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So thank you very much, all of you.
Our pleasure.
It was great talking to you, Kaustabh.
It was lovely. Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.